The film begins in the land of Wallachia. There is a creature that was formerly a local mythology, but among the legends a dragon appeared in the region. The dragon first assisted the kingdom in its military efforts, but it soon fled the land. 20 years later, the scene focuses on a destitute family with a father, mother, and children going about their daily lives. Despite their seeming deprivation, they are constantly appreciative and happy. They live in a house with a farm in the center of a meadow, surrounded by a forest of pine trees. Among the family's activities, a child appears to be plowing the dirt with his 2 cows. The boy's name was Luke. Exhausted, Luke fell asleep on the grass near his house. Not long after Luke closed his eyes, he was startled by the sound of a woman screaming. He was taken aback when he heard it and raced to the source of the noise, which was inside his home. Sure enough, he gently peered into his house and was shocked to see his entire family being ambushed and slain by a group of assassins known as the bear, the wolf, the scorpion, and the snake. After killing Luke's family, the killers burned down Luke's house and decided to split up for their next atrocity the next week. Luke was still distraught. He could only mourn and watch from a distance as his house was consumed by fire. He was now left with only his 2 cows, which had previously been utilized to plow the area. He then decided to go to the city and sell his cows to make money for the future. Luke arrived in the city and encountered a royal entourage, led by a king named Razvan. King Razvan came to the city to listen to his people's problems. Luke utilized this chance to seek retribution from monarch Razvan for the events that had just occurred, but instead of receiving justice, he was ignored by the monarch and ejected by his royal guards. Finally, Luke decided to sell his cows and hire a hitman to avenge himself. Luke was in the middle of a deal with the buyer of his cow when he was distracted by the attractiveness of a girl he happened to notice. After completing the purchase, Luke went to a pub and announced that he was seeking for an assassin. Shortly after he requested, someone approached him and offered his services. However, as he offered his services as a hitman, someone else did the same. The debate was unavoidable. The 2 persons hurried to get employed by Luke. Luke, perplexed by this, fled and broke into a house. The house belonged to a well-known blacksmith in the city. Luke then explained the difficulties he was experiencing. He also mentioned that he needed a sword but would exchange his 4 hectares of land because he did not have any money at the time. The blacksmith master then offered Luke a sword and some advice. Luke must confront a legendary dragon that lives in the high hills of the Himalayas. The blacksmith master also instructed him to bring a seed to give to the dragon. Luke initially didn't believe what the master stated, but he didn't know how else to get retribution for what had happened to him. After returning from the blacksmith master, Luke embarked on his journey to find the legendary dragon in question. Luke's journey began with him carrying a bag on his back through the hills. During his trek, he encountered various people and planned to ask the locals about the famous dragon's lair, but they believed he was insane and beat him. Luke ultimately decided to leave and continue his journey. On the way, he encountered a weird hunter. The unknown hunter claimed to know the location of the fabled dragon Luke was referring to and provided directions to it. He then pursued the strange hunter. Even though it was not yet winter, he noticed a tunnel in the heart of the surrounding woodland that was completely covered in ice. Luke hurriedly entered the cave. The cave was quite large, and he was standing in one of its rooms. Luke noticed seeds to summon the dragon in the center of the cave. Because it didn't show up, he called and urged the dragon to leave immediately. He was shocked when a big dragon approached him as soon as he shouted. Luke told the dragon what had happened, but instead of assisting him, the dragon attempted to assault and bully him. The dragon, Savath, was a female dragon. Unlike other dragons, who are known to spit fire, Savath can spit ice, which has the ability to freeze anything. Following Savath's introduction, Luke informed her again what he desired, but the dragon gave him a dismal response. Savath declined to help Luke exact his revenge because it was the primary reason he sought her assistance. Savath refused to help anyone in the name of vengeance because she believed that vengeance would only lead to danger and death. Luke, upset by Savath's response, exited the cave, leaving Savath behind. Luke then resumed his trek, and when night fell, he opted to rest after such a long travel. The next day, Luke awoke to be amazed by a white horse in front of him, which appeared eager to accompany him on his adventure. During the trek, he encountered a kind-hearted hunter named Darius. While continuing his adventure with Darius, Luke shared his life experiences. Darius turned out to be completely aware of the reputation of the assassins who had murdered his family. He then informed Luke that the group of assassins had dispersed according to the cardinal directions. One of the assassins, the bear, would travel to his lair in the Broken Lands, which was in the same direction as their voyage to the north. Luke and Darius developed a strategy to apprehend the bear because he was likely to bring with him the minions he had recruited. When Luke and Darius arrived in the Broken Lands, they decided to observe the activities of the bear and his gang. During their observation, the white horse that had been with them since the beginning suddenly transformed into a white dragon, none other than Savath. Darius was quite astonished by the transformation in the white horse and expressed his unhappiness to Savath. He claimed that Savath had previously declined to assist the kingdom when it needed her, and the kingdom labeled Savath a traitor. Darius' disdain for Savath's presence put Luke in a tough situation, as he forced Luke to choose between himself and Savath. Luke explained that he needed both Darius and Savath to assist him, but Darius disagreed and left him since Luke did not want to abandon Savath. As time passed, the bear and his gang became aware of Luke's whereabouts. The pursuit scene was inescapable. The horrified Luke raced as fast as he could, followed by the bear and his crew. Finally, Savath arrived to confront the bear gang. Meanwhile, Luke was still attempting to flee from the bear to the top of the hill. The bear, who was more stronger, quickly captured Luke and repeatedly attacked him by twisting his body. Luke's belt, which the bear used to twist Luke's body, finally broke, causing the bear to lose his equilibrium, fall into a gorge, and eventually die. The death of the bear prompted Luke to embark on his next expedition, accompanied by Savath. The next journey took Luke to the wolf's den. Luke and Savath became closer as they traveled to the wolf's lair, eventually arriving in a forest. The wolf and his group approached them unexpectedly. Savath defeated the wolf pack, like he had in the previous encounter, with the exception of the wolf himself. Savath held the wolf in his grasp as a prisoner tasked with introducing Luke and Savath to the rest of the herd. The wolf stated that the closest excursion was to the snake's lair. It turned out that when Luke arrived, Darius had already arrived and had attacked the snake. Unfortunately, Darius' attempted attack on the snake was discovered, and he was surrounded. Savath did not remain silent in the face of Darius' terrible situation. She then assisted Darius in attacking the snake's flock by spitting ice from her mouth. During the struggle, Luke and Savath were caught off guard, allowing the wolf to break from the ropes that tied him and leave. However, Savath was able to avert it by freezing his arm until it shattered and split from his body. Meanwhile, the snake attempted to flee but was successfully pursued by Luke, ending in a heated confrontation between the two. During the fight, Luke effectively paralyzed the snake. The night after the fight, Luke inquired about the scorpion's whereabouts. The snake claimed it was all in vain because he would not reveal the scorpion's location. When morning arrived, Luke and Darius went to the city, intending to imprison the snake. That night, as Darius was at the pub, the royal troops suddenly attacked him. Apparently, the attack was the result of being grabbed and imprisoned by a snake. The attack revealed that the 4 criminals were truly hired by the monarchy to kill impoverished people in order to keep food supplies stable and food availability high, giving the kingdom the appearance of prosperity. The king's order to kill the impoverished people, which Darius discovered in the snake's cave, serves as evidence of his cruelty. At the time, one of the guards noticed a bag with the arrest warrant, which was taken by one of the royal soldiers. After the king and his army had left, the scorpion arrived to rescue the snake from prison. Luke and Darius, who were aware of the situation, pursued the snake and scorpion that had escaped from prison. Luke and Darius arrived in a snowy region, but were abruptly surprised by a gang of strangers. During the onslaught, Darius instructed Luke to grab the horse and move towards it, but when Luke went to his horse, he was stunned by a stick carried by the scorpion, who had unexpectedly appeared. On one hand, Darius could fight the scorpion's army one by one, but eventually the time arrived for him to confront the scorpion head-on. Meanwhile, Luke, who had been encircled and overwhelmed, was attacked by the snake. At the same time, Savath, dressed as a cat, was recovering evidence of King Razvan's cruelty from a soldier who had taken it from Darius. While almost successful in seizing evidence of King Razvan's misdeeds, Savath had a vision that Luke was in danger. Savath transformed back into a dragon and dashed to aid Luke and Darius. Darius, who was still fighting with the scorpion, could toss a stick at it. Resistance from the scorpion was unavoidable, until they both tumbled into the water. Darius won the battle in the water and was able to insert the arrow he took from the water into the scorpion's neck. Without his knowledge, the scorpion killed on the spot. When Savath arrived at the combat scene, she noticed Luke was already battered from being attacked by the snake. Savath was outraged and immediately killed the snake. After killing the snake, Sivith brought Luke to the treatment factory in the jungle, where a woman named Wana worked. Wana is a girl that piqued Luke's interest while he was in town. The treatment center is a big facility surrounded by lush gardens and trees. Wana is a woman Luke has been interested in when he first moved to the city. But the joy didn't last long. King Razvan and his army, accompanied by the people, arrived to Luke and Sivith's location. The coming of the king and his people was intended to deport Savath, who was deemed a traitor to the realm. Those who heard this agreed and supported King Razvan. During this tense meeting, the wolf abruptly emerged among them. The wolf seemed to have lived, and his appearance was intended to put an end to the king's bad actions. He confessed that the monarch had ordered the slaughter of poor people to make the realm appear rich. Hearing this, Sivith offered safety to anyone who was truthful about the king's treatment. Some of the king's guards raised their voices, telling of King Razvan's harshness. A group of soldiers and his subjects eventually forced King Razvan to abdicate his kingdom. King Razvan, who could no longer avoid, was shackled by his bodyguards and his own people, preventing him from fleeing. Finally, the entire present population learnt the truth. The people also understood that Sivith was not a traitor dragon all along, but King Razvan had led them to believe that Sivith was a traitor to the country. By the end of this story, Luke will be able to return home and live happily with Wana after repairing his farm. Luke, Wana, and other city residents once paid him a visit to rejoice and feast together. Not to be overlooked, Sivith, who is currently a member of the people, can live in peace. The lesson of this film is that sustaining justice necessitates strength to conquer the challenges that must be addressed. However, these difficulties do not have to be overcome alone. If we have allies who are committed to upholding justice, we may overcome them all together.